The plateau is not failure. It is loading. Breathe. The most misunderstood phase of change is the one where nothing seems to happen. No signals, no confirmation, no visible reward. This is where people panic. They call it stagnation. They call it being stuck. They call it proof that something is wrong. But from a systems perspective, this phase is essential. It is the plateau. And the plateau is not absence. It is accumulation without display. In complex systems, progress does not announce itself continuously. Variables adjust quietly. Thresholds are approached invisibly. Stability reorganizes beneath the surface. The external world stays still while the internal structure recalibrates. This is not delay. This is preparation. During a plateau, identity coherence is forming. Beliefs stop contradicting each other. Emotional defaults begin to settle. Resistance thins without drama. Nothing looks impressive. That's the point. If something were happening loudly, it would not be stable yet. This is why impatience breaks progress. When you demand evidence too early, you destabilize the very structure that is forming. You interrupt integration because the ego wants reassurance. Reality does not reward reassurance seeking. It rewards readiness. Think of the plateau as compression. Energy is not moving outward. It is condensing inward, like pressure building quietly before release. If you force motion now, you scatter what is gathering. This is why effort during a plateau often feels heavy. You are pushing against a phase that requires stillness. Here's the dark humor. Most people quit right before the jump. Not because they are weak, but because the silence feels threatening. Silence is mistaken for failure, but silence is often coherence completing. The plateau ends not when you try harder, but when the internal state becomes simple enough to move cleanly. When contradiction resolves, when emotional noise drops, when identity stops negotiating, the system releases, not gradually, decisively. This is why the shift feels sudden. Not because it was sudden, but because you were not meant to watch it forming. The moment it completes, the external world updates. Timing aligns, access opens, momentum appears. People call it luck. They didn't see the loading phase. If you are in a plateau right now, nothing has gone wrong. You are not behind. You are not blocked. You are being compressed. And compression precedes release. Breathe. Next, we'll define the catalyst itself. What it actually is. What it is not. And why its size does not matter. Only its timing. When you see that clearly, you stop chasing big moments and start respecting quiet readiness. Why change does not happen gradually. Breathe. Most people believe change is slow. They imagine progress as a staircase, step after step, effort stacked on effort, pain proving legitimacy. That belief feels responsible. It also doesn't match reality, because real change doesn't arrive evenly. It arrives in jumps. You don't become someone a little bit at a time. You cross thresholds. One day looks ordinary. The next day, the context is different. Income appears, access opens, relationships shift, identity reorganizes. Not because effort suddenly increased, but because something collapsed into place. This is the nature of a catalyst. In physics, systems do not evolve smoothly. They hold steady, then reorganize abruptly when a critical variable is met. Water doesn't warm itself into steam gradually. It stays water until it doesn't. Reality behaves the same way. Breathe. You can exist in one state for weeks, months, years, with no visible movement. And then one event, one conversation, one decision, one realization moves you from one baseline to another. Not from 50 to 51, from 50 to 150. Here's the uncomfortable part. Nothing new arrived in that moment. The change was already prepared. The system was loaded. The plateau you called stagnation was actually accumulation without feedback. From the outside, nothing was happening. Internally, alignment was consolidating. Beliefs were stabilizing. Identity was cohering. Resistance was thinning. The catalyst didn't create the change. It triggered the release. Breathe. This is why linear thinking fails people. They keep asking, why isn't this working yet? Because they expect progress to announce itself. But reality doesn't negotiate timelines. It responds to readiness. And readiness is invisible until it's complete. Here's the dark humor. People exhaust themselves trying to look like progress is happening, while missing the moment it actually does. They confuse struggle with legitimacy. They worship friction. They distrust ease, as if the universe only respects exhaustion. It doesn't. It respects coherence. Catalysts don't respond to effort. They respond to positioning. And if you don't believe catalysts exist, you filter them out. You dismiss them as coincidence. You delay them as not enough. You miss them entirely. Belief in catalysts is not optimism. It's perceptual permission. It allows you to recognize the moment when the system is ready to jump. Breathe. Nothing changes until everything does. And when it does, it feels sudden. In the next chapter, we'll dismantle the myth of linear progress completely and explain why plateaus are not delays, but loading phases for discontinuity. Once you understand that, you stop forcing motion and start preparing for release. The moment release becomes motion. Breathe. When the internal structure becomes simple enough, movement begins on its own. Not because you decided, not because you pushed, because nothing is resisting anymore. This is where the catalyst appears, not as a dramatic event, not as a thunderbolt, often as something small, a sentence you hear differently, a choice that suddenly feels obvious, an opportunity that no longer feels intimidating, a door you notice because you are no longer bracing. The size of the catalyst is irrelevant. What matters is that the system is ready to respond. A catalyst does not add energy. It removes friction. That is why it feels sudden. From the inside, it feels like relief. From the outside, it looks like acceleration. People say everything changed overnight. But nothing changed overnight. The overnight moment was the release point of a process that had already completed. In physics, a system remains stable until a critical threshold is crossed. Then it reorganizes instantly. No negotiation, no warning. Reality behaves the same way. When coherence reaches a certain density, the smallest input is enough to trigger a full state change. This is why forcing big actions too early fails. The system is not yet receptive. But when readiness is complete, even a whisper moves everything. This is also why catalysts are missed, not because they weren't present, but because attention was elsewhere. If you expect change to be loud, you overlook quiet openings. If you believe progress must hurt, you distrust ease. If you believe success must be earned through exhaustion, you dismiss what arrives gently. Belief shapes perception. If you do not believe in discontinuity, you filter it out. You delay, you hesitate, you rationalize. And the moment passes, not lost, just postponed. The moment readiness is recognized, the response becomes immediate. Action feels clean. Timing feels natural. Effort drops. You are not motivating yourself. You are responding to alignment. This is why the shift feels personal even when nothing personal happened. Identity updates quietly. You stop asking for permission. You stop waiting for certainty. You stop rehearsing doubt. The body knows first. Posture adjusts. Breath deepens. Pacing changes. The external world follows. Nothing magical occurred. Nothing supernatural intervened. The system simply moved once resistance was no longer required. And when that happens, motion is inevitable. Let this settle. Let the idea dissolve into sensation. Because this is not something to memorize. It is something to recognize the next time movement happens without effort. And it will. Breathe. Stay here. There is a moment, often unnoticed, when effort stops being necessary. Not because you succeeded, but because resistance is no longer doing its job. Resistance was never an enemy. It was a stabilizer. It held you in place until the structure beneath you could support movement. When resistance dissolves, the system does not ask what you want. It moves. This is why the shift can feel disorienting. One moment you are preparing, the next you are responding. Not planning, not convincing. Responding. The mind often tries to catch up. It asks, why now? What changed? How did this happen? But the answers are always late. The body knew first. The breath slowed before the opportunity appeared. The posture softened before the decision was made. The nervous system settled before the context shifted. This is the sequence most people miss. They think the event caused the change, but the change preceded the event. The event was simply the first visible proof that the internal state had already crossed the threshold. This is why the same opportunity can appear many times in a life and only work once. The opportunity didn't change. You did. Readiness is not about wanting. It is about compatibility. When the internal state matches the demand of the moment, the response feels obvious. Not brave, not risky, obvious. Notice how different that feels from forcing yourself to act. Forced action is loud. Clean action is quiet. Forced action needs encouragement. Clean action needs no commentary. It happens, and only later is it explained. This is the point where identity completes its update. You stop referring to the old version of yourself, not because you rejected it, but because it no longer organizes behavior. The old story loses relevance, not dramatically, naturally. From here, momentum feels strange, not fast, uninterrupted. Things connect without friction. Decisions chain together smoothly. Energy stops leaking into self-management. This is not acceleration, it is continuity. And continuity is what sustains change. Not discipline, not motivation. Stability. When stability is present, you do not need to hold anything together. Life carries itself. Let this sink beneath thought. You are not waiting for a catalyst. You are becoming compatible with one. And when compatibility completes, the smallest signal is enough to reorganize everything. Stay with the breath. Let the idea dissolve. Nothing to remember, nothing to apply. Only a recognition that will surface when the moment arrives. And it will. Breathe. Stay here. Breathe. There is nothing left to chase here. Chasing belongs to a system that believes movement must be earned. But earning is a story told by resistance to justify its own existence. When resistance no longer organizes you, you do not try to move. You respond. Response is effortless because it is accurate. Accuracy feels calm, not exciting, not dramatic. Calm. That calm is not boredom. It is alignment without friction. Notice how the body behaves when nothing is being forced. The breath moves without instruction. The shoulders stay where they are. The jaw does not prepare for impact. This is how readiness feels. Readiness does not announce itself. It does not make promises. It does not negotiate timelines. It simply removes the need to wait. From this state, decisions arise cleanly, not from urgency, not from fear of missing out, from clarity. Clarity does not rush. Clarity does not hesitate. It acts when action is required and rests when it is not. This is why movement now feels different. Not like pushing a door, like realizing it was never locked. Nothing external needs to change for this to be complete. The external will reorganize on its own in response to stability. That is not belief. That is systems behavior. The world reflects coherence because coherence is predictable. Predictability feels safe. Safety invites participation. Notice how effort dissolves when participation replaces control. You are no longer managing life. You are moving with it. This is not a peak. It is not a climax. It is a baseline. One you can return to because nothing here requires maintenance. Let the idea finish itself. No conclusion needed. No summary required. What needed to shift has already done so. Breathe. Stay with the breath. Let silence do the rest.